Be cool if the form did something. Maybe we can't quite handle making it put whatever you type into the list, but if it could add something to the list, if it could at least do as much as that button in Reactrobats that just added one person to the array, that'd be a step in the right direction. So I think we're getting close to the point where we're going to have to put that array in state. So then we have to ask ourselves, which component does that state belong in? So there should be one component that's responsible for managing that array. What do you think? What are your ideas? It's okay to be wrong. We haven't really talked about this stuff yet.
It has to be able to see both the message form and the message list. It should probably be chat.
It needs to be able to see both the message form and the message list, so it should probably be chat. I agree. So message form is going to need to know about it because it's going to have to add stuff to it, right? And message list already needs to know about it. So message list, we could put it in message list, but then how would it get from message list to message form? Because the form is not inside the list. So basically the state has to be high enough that all of the other components that depend on it can receive it as a prop. Because it's either got to be a state or it's got to be a prop, right? Either it manages it, either the component manages it itself, or it needs to be passed into it as a prop. So it needs to be high enough up in the chain or in the tree that it can be passed down as a prop if it's not going to be in that component's state. We know we can't put it in message list because then it couldn't end up in the form. So it's going to have to be at least as high up as chat. And wouldn't you know it, we already made chat a class. So that's one thing we don't have to do to make this work. So let's add it to the state of the chat component. Where do we initialize state? In the constructor. So just add a constructor. And we know that if we add a constructor, we need to make sure we call super, which is the constructor of component, the base class. Then we can say this.state dot messages. Excuse me, this.state equals an object with a key of messages, which is that array. I can just go over to message list and copy this array for right now. I still like my trailing comma. Okay, cool. But now message list no longer has this messages variable, right? So everything's going to explode. Messages is not defined on line 9 of message list. How do I remedy that? The messages are now this.state.messages inside chat. How do I get them into message list? How do you get any outside data into a component? Pass it in as a prop, right? Forgive me if I'm belaboring points, but when no one answers questions, I don't know if it's because you don't know or if it's because you just don't want to have your voice heard by your peers. You all have beautiful voices. It's okay. You can talk. So yeah, it should be passed in as a prop to message list. So messages seems like a perfectly reasonable prop name. What do I put in there? Like you mean it. This.state.messages. Because that's how we refer to this array from inside chat. So we will set the messages prop on message list to this.state.messages. Swell. I still have an error. So in my message list component, I have messages.map, but it's not messages.map, right? Messages is a prop, not a local variable. So how do I do that? If this were a class, I would say this.props.messages, right? But it's not. It's just a function. So my props come in as an argument, right? Props. So then I can just say props.messages.map. And I'm back to where I was. It works now. But now those are actually in state. So the list of messages is actually managed in the chat component, and it's passed into the message list as a prop. Seem legit? Manage messages. Let's see. Add messages to chat's state.